Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video. This time the subject is the Young Turks, that oh so great channel, or once so great channel with Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, um, and about how I stopped watching them a little while back. And I've been watching a lot of Jimmy Dore's videos about the Young Turks, or the Young Jerks, and I I feel kind of good about my decision. Um, I stopped watching about June of 2020, and I unsubbed eventually. And this was a long-term thing because it was a long process of me not watching them anymore. And I'm going to go into why I stopped watching them. So it kind of was a long process and a long time coming. And I know that they're funded by billionaires like Katzenberg, and all these people like have started to like ingratiate themselves with the Young Turks, and also there's been business practices that have been controversial with them for a apparent pro labor news source, quote unquote, news source. So it was several years ago. They had these guests on and these guest commentators, and these commentators that were semi-regular, that were really questionable. And it was really just like something I couldn't really, it was hard to deal with because it was in the midst of like the whole Gamergate and like all these cultural debates, and some of these people really missed the mark as far as who were on there. They really didn't really understand what people were talking about. See, I watched a lot of those videos. I watched a lot of the controversial debates about Gamergate, and what's her name? Leanna was Kesner? Leanna, the redhead Leanna. Forgot her last name. I haven't watched her in quite a while. She did some videos that were kind of more from a moderate point of view in regards to that, and it was actually pretty cool. So it's like, oh, this is what they're saying, this is what they're saying, this is the truth, the middle ground, right? So this cultural war stuff, just some of these people, like, I'm not even going to name some of the commentators on the Young Turks that were really annoying. Ironically, Anna and Cenk were a little more in the middle about some of these debates, and Anna used to talk about nuance and all this stuff, but it was kind of annoying. I'd still watch their segments and stuff, and after 2016, they got pretty in the anti-Trump realm, and I didn't mind that at first. They did a lot of segments, though. It was just like, it was overkill in a way. It's like, you can talk about other things other than Trump. It's just like some of these media outlets just went over the top, like with like Loser Donald, for example. Jimmy Dore was talking about that the other day. It was like just like cringeworthy kind of shit. There's just like anything that Trump did is like had to be like under the microscope all the time. Whereas like once in a while you'll have someone else that they'll talk about, a Democrat that does something bad. But it's just like this extra focus that went a little too far. It was annoying. So I still went along with it, and I still watched it a lot. And I didn't really understand Jimmy Dore's like anti-Russiagate thing. I'm starting to understand it now, and I'm not really too familiar with the side that people like Matt Taibbi or Glenn Greenwald have represented, with seeing Russiagate as kind of a fraud to some extent. And I guess it's not it's framed that way. It's like, framing it that way would be kind of disingenuous. Like, talking to a family member, he's like, well, bot farms aren't the same as rigging the election. And that's a good point. So I don't know enough about the Russiagate thing one way or the other. I did buy the Mueller report, but I never read it. I actually bought it originally to antagonize a right-wing coworker who I'm now really friendly with about politics, ironically, but more less on that story. I'm looking at it right now. Um, so I went along with all that stuff, and I was like, okay, well, they're still valuable stuff here, Made fun of Trump supporters, and even at the same time, I was like, well, this things I don't like about Trump. I think he has a cult. And then there's other stuff that's okay, like the crime bill that he, the crime reform bill that he passed, and some stuff like that, right? Smashing the TPP, like Kyle Kalinske was still gave him praise when he could, and then Shank sort of did too, less than Kyle, but what happened was, I started to notice more and more that they were just kind of sensationalist. I was just so sucked into them, I wasn't even noticing the forest from the trees, and just this sensationalist kind of media, like just like drama. It was just like it's almost like Infowars or something. I'm comparing Young Turks to Infowars, but it's like it almost became like a left wing Infowars in the end. But then we had this special thing that happened early in 2020, this special event um, called the virus, and that put a whole new spin on things with a lot of these media outlets like Young Turks. So not only did they have something to shame Trump supporters with, they had this virus to cheer on, seemingly cheer on when Trump supporters would die because they went to some large gathering. And it was already over, it's already overblown that, if Trump had a rally with 20,000 people, then like 4 people would die from the virus. Then Young Turks would report about it and just like blow it out of proportion, like half the people in the room died from it or something. Like it was just got really ridiculous. But one of the most important things is that they seemed to celebrate the deaths of these people. And it was like it was every other day they had these reports like, oh, this person, who rebelled against wearing masks, and then Shank is like, it's in the air. He's like he's going all fucking totally sensationalistic about this stuff. Excuse me, I had a dating message there. Oh, I'm glad she's real. Hopefully, not a scam artist, or sugar baby. Anyways, no less about that. Are you real? Yes, I am. I'm doing a video right now. Of course, I'm real. So it's just a debate, talk to online dating crap. Anyways, so yeah, it was kind of one of those things, and then what happened was they would do these. They would, there was those protests in April against the lockdowns. I was like, yeah, there's some dumb Trump supporters in the crowd and stuff, doing that, and they're, but they showed some of these signs that the people had of these anti-lockdown protesters, and considering the CARES Act gave $1,200 and that's it, and better unemployment for a while for some people, and considering some of the calls I was getting at work about how fucking like convoluted and fucked up a lot of these states' unemployment systems were, and how a lot of people weren't actually getting the unemployment they were promised, I began to cry foul on Young Turks shaming these anti-lockdown supporters or protesters. And because one of the signs really got to me was my feeding my family is essential, stuff like that. So I started to just see like, and obviously the irony is that Mnuchin and was against a lot of the extending the unemployment at one point, and some of Trump's very swamp laden cabinet were against even what Trump was for. So that's one thing, but the Young Turks seem to just have this smug, arrogant, condescending, virtue signaling aura about them at that point that really turned me off. And not only did the sensationalism just deepen, I mean, they already were sensationalists, for years, and it was like yellow journalism. It was kind of like something that shock, or the clickbait titles and just the reports, and they got shit wrong too. And I noticed that they got shit wrong. It investigates some more of the the articles they were referencing, or the people that they were referencing, and they totally got totally biased. I began to realize, like, maybe they're not who they say they are. Maybe they're not as progressive as they seem. So I started watching. I still watched secular talk, and I started to watch more Jimmy Dore stuff. And I'm like, there's a major difference between him and the Young Turks. And he left the Young Turks, and I'm still not sure about the Russia stuff, but I know that Jimmy Dore actually cares about people that don't think the same way as him. Actually has empathy, and it seemed like a lot of times the Young Turks didn't, and it just sickened me. It sickened me how much they celebrate these people dying. It just seemed like, I mean, they were saying this is proof that you have to follow the guidelines. Oh, these people complaining, and not only that. So a month later, you know, I'm going to actually correlate this to the Infowars again because I think this is really important. A month later, the Black Lives Matter protests started. Oh, they were totally on board, of course. They were totally like, oh, we got to celebrate this thing, blah, 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 blah. So I saw the disconnect right there. You're telling people to stay indoors, not go outside, not meet up with people. Yeah, maybe more Trump supporters don't wear masks as much, but it's like just the messaging there just was so contradictory to what they said before. I just got really sickened by it. And it just started to become it just became really ridiculous. I unsubbed maybe June, July of 2020. And it kind of reminds me of when I turned against InfoWars. And that was during the I'd put up with them, and this is weird to admit that I used to watch InfoWars, but I had put up with them until, like, who was that? Who got shot? I think it was St. Louis. Who was Michael Brown protests? Because it seemed like in midstream they changed their rhetoric about that protest. At first they were like, "Oh yeah, the police are bad, blah blah blah," and then all of a sudden they started to like shift. It was like 2014, 2015, and they had already kind of gone down that road because they were talking, the Sandy Hook thing, the fucking, um, uh, some of the, what was that guy, that dude who killed the Colorado shooting, like they're starting to call all these things, like everything was a false flag to them, like everything, no matter what. Like I used to watch because, believe it or not, and this is hard to say with a straight face, Alex Jones had some credible ideas and guests on his show. He had, he used to have like Naomi Wolf and like, um, he had like Al Jorgensen. He had like Henry Rollins on his show. I mean, he had all these just wild. You would never realize he had all these guests, especially during the Bush administration when he was really like way more credible. And he was never completely credible. My thoughts of him back then is like he's on the right track. He's a little crazy, but at least he's going against these people that I'm against. And he's saying these things that are important to say, even if they're exaggerated. But after 2014, 2015, I was really off that track completely. I think it was 2012 to 2013. I was starting to like have doubts about him. But the same thing happened to the Young Turks. And I think it's money. I think it's money related for both of them. I think Alex Jones and Young Turks have to have this steady thing going on. Like, if they can't, they have to keep it going, keep it rolling. It's like, I'm trying to think of a good comparison, but like they have to keep it going, so they have to start making shit up, or start going in this direction or that direction, because otherwise they wouldn't survive. It's like, you look at I mean, you look at like self-help, for example, like, um, someone might like write a book that's helpful to people, and then they have this industry where they do these seminars and stuff, and then they get into like, oh, we got to talk about health now. Oh, we got to talk about this political thing. We got to go in this direction. It's like they have to keep the franchise, the cycles going, so they have to start like get more extreme in some way. It's like, why doesn't David Icke talk about reptilians anymore? You notice that? It's like, did the reptilian thing get old? Do reptilians not exist anymore to David Icke? It's just like, these grifts have to keep going, and they're not completely grifts all the time. They just have to be, they're they have to perpetuate in the future. So you can't really, have the same message. You have to evolve to get more money. So Alex Jones saw the writing on the wall. He became ostensibly more Republican, more right wing, and became the Trump guy. And I think Cenk is becoming like this weird hybrid of like neoliberal meets pseudo progressive, as Jimmy Dore has said. But ironically, I think Jimmy Dore, in the 2016 when he spit on Alex Jones, in the 2016, I think it was a Republican convention, or was it Republican convention, when they were doing reporting on that. I think he spat on the wrong guy. I think he should have spat on Cenk instead, because Cenk is really, at this point, Cenk Uyghur is just as bad as Alex Jones in a different way. It's sensationalism, it's division, it's hatred, it's hypocrisy, and it's glossing over the crimes of the Democratic Party, just like Alex Jones would gloss over the crimes of the Trump administration. Cenk is doing the same with the Democrats. I mean, for the most part, he'll profess to support something like force the vote, like Jimmy Dore did. I mean, Jimmy Dore actually did, like, he actually did, Jimmy Dore actually helped start that. But he'll profess that and then turncoat, he'll be a turncoat. No, I don't support it anymore. Just because, Katzenberg probably called him on the phone. These capitalist fucking Democrat scumbags, So, Democratic Party and the Republican Party need to end, by the way. I'm more mad at the Democrats for being total hypocrites this year, though. This past year or so. Republicans are shit, but they're shit. But the sad thing about the Democrats is that people think they're not shit, but they are. But that's why I stopped watching the Young Turks. It took a long time. I can't watch them anymore. They make me ill, like watching Cenk and Anna. The irony is like they're doing like this social distancing thing with their show. Like, they won't film in the same studio anymore, and then these people that are way more progressive are still in the same studio. It's like fucking ironic. Except for Jimmy Dore is like, he's a little different because he doesn't have Ron McClone in the studio anymore, but it's just his wife in the studio. That's a little different, but like, it's tough to watch all that shit, and it's just a fucking annoying. And I'm glad I stopped watching the Young Turks. It really, at the end of the day, it's just the same as InfoWars, and in a certain way. So that's all I gotta say.